And David is an industry veteran. He's been programming software since the 1980s. So we're very lucky to have him on the phone with us today. He has embraced this integration between two leading market providers, one being QuickBooks for entry-level accounting and the other being SugarCRM. The ease of use of both of these softwares have caused them to be market leaders, and we're just very excited to have you join us today to learn a little bit more about how you can use the two of these systems together to eliminate redundant data entry and just to make your lives easier. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to David. David, thank you so much.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for telling everybody that I've been doing this from the 80s, so I sound old. I appreciate that.
You're wise.
We're going to go through a quick PowerPoint. Hopefully everybody can see this. And then after the PowerPoint, we'll get into a actual demo of the product. So that's me. I'm David Fay, Fay Business Systems Group. A little bit about Fay Business Systems Group. We've been around for more than 25 years. We're a Sugar Gold partner. We're known for being a leading provider of integrations with Sugar in addition to our QuickBooks integration. We've done integration with Sage, Intact, Vantage, Constant Contact, Authorize.net, and a few other products. Our team is all here in sunny Southern California in Woodland Hills, so we don't outsource any of the programming. Everybody who programs for us is on our team, as well as our support team is dedicated in-house. Over the years, we've done hundreds of successful accounting, ERP, and CRM implementations, and our Sugar QuickBooks integration is another example of the kind of work that we do. An overview of our services. You know, we do custom programming, we do implementations, training, support, data migrations, and data conversions, and all manner of custom solutions in the CRM and ERP space. About Sugar, many of you may know about Sugar, some of you may not. Sugar is the fastest growing CRM software company in the world. They were founded in 2004. To date, there have been more than 10 million downloads of the product with over 1 million users worldwide. One of the things about Sugar is it is an international company. It's been implemented all over the world in lots of different languages, and that's one of its strengths. The cool thing about Sugar for us, some of the cool things that we like, you know, you have a lot of flexibility with it. It can be hosted in the cloud with Sugar or hosted on-premise on your own server. You can have it hosted at Amazon or any third party. So it's your choice where to host it. It's an open source product. It's very customizable, very flexible. There's virtually nothing you can't make it do. And as you get into the pricing models about Sugar, you find it's really cost effective. It's less than a third the cost usually of something like Salesforce.com, and we really like it for these reasons as well as, you know, a bunch of other things that we'll get into. Intuit and QuickBooks, you know, as everybody in the world probably knows about Intuit and QuickBooks. It's the leading provider of accounting software in small and medium-sized businesses. They've been doing it for more than 30 years. Interestingly enough, it was more than 4 million customers worldwide. I couldn't decide whether I thought that was a big number or a small number, but it's a lot of customers. And, you know, their solutions run the gamut from accounting, inventory, warehouse management, etc. So our integration, you know, we built this integration because there seems to be a great need for this. Obviously, QuickBooks is the most widely used accounting software in the world. Sugar is as the fastest growing CRM company in the world, is gaining a lot of traction in the market, and so we built this integration. It currently works with QuickBooks Professional, QuickBooks Premier, and QuickBooks Enterprise. It works with Sugar, whether or not Sugar is in the cloud or hosted on your own server, doesn't matter. As well, just to also note, for those of you who are running QuickBooks or in a hosted environment, it'll work that way as well. The sync happens on a scheduler. The default is every 10 minutes, but you can change it to run every 5 minutes, every hour, whatever you want it to do. Most of our users seem to, the 10-minute mark seems to work for them. Some of the key attributes of the integration, include, we're synchronizing customer data between Sugar and QuickBooks, inventory items, including inventory, non-inventory service items, all the different kinds of items in QuickBooks, they sync to Sugar. Sales history syncs to Sugar. Sales history by product syncs to Sugar, as well as detailed invoice history with their line items going into Sugar. So anytime you generate an invoice or a sales receipt in QuickBooks, it appears in Sugar. Additionally, entering in Sugar quotes and sales orders will be synced into QuickBooks estimates or sales orders. So that's a great quality for sales reps out in the field. You can enter quotes into Sugar in the cloud, and then, literally minutes later, they would be appearing in QuickBooks. We have some new features in our latest version of the integration, which have some advanced features, including, customers with multiple ship-to addresses in QuickBooks now syncs to Sugar. Customer price tables in QuickBooks now sync to Sugar, as well as for people using the advanced inventory component of QuickBooks. Some of that data ends up in Sugar, like inventory quantities by location and such. We also give you the ability to customize the mappings between the two products. And we won't spend a lot of time on that in the demo, but you should know that if you have custom fields in QuickBooks, you can map them to custom fields in Sugar or standard fields in Sugar and vice versa. You have that complete capability within the product. You don't have to be a programmer to do it. It's a fairly simple screen. And now, with that, we're going to get into the demo. Here's some contact information. We'll come back to the screen at the end. But let's get into the demo. So with our integration, it requires 3 components. There's Sugar itself, and this is a home screen in Sugar. Hopefully it looks familiar to you guys. There's QuickBooks. Hopefully this looks familiar to QuickBooks users. And then there's the QuickBooks Web Connector. The QuickBooks Web Connector is installed on any computer running QuickBooks. And there's, detailed instructions on how to install it. It's not very difficult, but that gets installed. So there's a QuickBooks Web Connector, QuickBooks, and Sugar itself. Now I'm going to start you with the admin screen just so you see after you install the integration, which is pretty straightforward. It adds 2 new functions inside of Sugar, a QuickBooks integration configuration screen and then some QuickBooks mapping. We'll get into the mapping towards the end. If you go into the configuration screen, this is what you need to do after the installation. So you enter in a product key, which we will give you. Tells you when the key expires. You type in the URL for where your Sugar is running, and like I said, it can be in the cloud or it could be locally on a server. And that's really about it for making it work. There's also this setup file which helps you configure the web connector. But beyond that, this is the information you need to get the integration up and running. Then there's a configuration screen with a few questions. And it's really, this is it. These are the key questions. There's more advanced stuff, but this is the key stuff. So the first question it asks you is, which system is the master data source? Is it QuickBooks or is it Sugar? That means if there's a conflict in customers, if there's different addresses, which system would take precedence? So in this case, we're going to say QuickBooks. Second question, when you enter quotes in Sugar, do you want them to go to estimates or sales orders in QuickBooks? So you tell it that. The third question is, when you're entering quotes in Sugar, there's a quote stage field that sort of tells the status of the quote. You get to tell it which status indicates that's the one I want to go to QuickBooks. So you can have different statuses that'll keep it in Sugar and won't send it to QuickBooks, and then if you make it close accepted, it will go to QuickBooks. There's a few other things related to some case integration, some syncing by products and by name, and then you check off the integration points that you want. So we want accounts and customers to be synced, so we'll have that checked. We want our salespeople and sales reps from QuickBooks to Sugar to be synced, so we're going to check that. We want our quotes to go into QuickBooks, so we'll check that. We're not going to sync cases right now. That's a new part of our integration, is syncing cases to invoices. We want sales history to go from QuickBooks to Sugar, so we're going to check that. We want items to go from QuickBooks to Sugar. We're going to check that. We want product price levels to go from QuickBooks to Sugar. and we want inventory quantities on hand to go from QuickBooks to Sugar. So we're all set on this configuration screen, and that's it. And so now we're going to get into the demo a little bit. So let me go back to the home screen. One of the cool things about Sugar that we like is how flexible the dashboards are on this home screen. And you can see, it's easy to move stuff around. If I wanted this dashboard to be here, I can just drag things around very easily. Now, some of the data here you'll notice has year-to-date sales in it. This is all data coming in from QuickBooks. So if you have a dashboard here that says my top accounts, this is all information that's coming in from QuickBooks. And so if you're a salesperson or a business owner, you can instantly see who your hot customers are from this. In addition, we created a little collections dashlet here. And again, it tells you which of your customers owe you the most amount of money. And it makes it easy to go follow up on that. So for example, in this particular dash, so we have the customer name, we have the balance, and we put their phone number and email address. So this could be used by a bookkeeper to track collections if you wanted to. We'll get into these reports as well. These reports also use some of the QuickBooks data. We'll circle back to them towards the end. So if I were to drill into a customer, let's look at Christy. Okay, so with Christy, you have the basic information here, her name, her address, email address, some notes. This all comes in from QuickBooks. And then we have sales history here that comes in from QuickBooks. But before we get into that, let's take a look at QuickBooks for a second here, and we'll look at Christy. So we'll see Christy, her address is 50 Kobe Bryant Road. Let's change her address in QuickBooks just while we're doing this. And I'm more of an old school guy, so let's change it to 100 Magic Johnson Parkway. And let's make that in Inglewood, and we'll make this 90020. Okay, and so if we waited 10 minutes, that address would change, but I'm just going to manually initiate the sync. So now let's go back into Christy, and in a couple minutes, hopefully the address will change. We'll see if it does. So we have this basic information. Then below that, we have what we call a sales history dashlet or subpanel. And it lists all the invoices that have gone to Christy. And you'll see there's the invoice number, the date, the due date, a PO number if there is one, the dollar amount, and then a checkbox which indicates if it's been paid. You can click on the invoice. Sorry, our computers are running a little slow this morning. And it gives you more detailed information about the invoice. So you have the header information, the invoice number, the name, the date, sales tax rate, subtotal, sales tax amount, total amount, a ship date if there is one. And then below that are the line items. And you can see everything that's shipped on this. And so there was a wood door, there were 100 hinges, etc. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Christy. Okay, so we're back at the Christie's main screen, and we'll see, oh, look at that, her address is now changed to 100 Magic Johnson Parkway. And so that's how quickly the sync works. If it runs every 10 minutes, things will be really up to date in Sugar. Some of the other history that ends up in here is we also have product sales history. So this shows you, for Christy, this is everything that she's bought during the year. So you can see it's sorted by year-to-date quantity. And there's 148 hinges, 43 removals, 40 cabinet pulls, etc. You could also sort it by dollars if you want, and you can see that in dollar order. So that's pretty cool. Again, great information for salespeople if they're going to go walk in the door and meet with a customer. This is great to have at your fingertips, especially if you're using one of the Sugar mobile products. Sugar runs great on an iPad, and so if you pull this up on an iPad before you walk in the door, or even after you walk in the door, you can show it to your customers and you can talk about what they're buying and what they're not buying. We have the multiple ship-to addresses that come in QuickBooks, so this is another sync. We can see, there's a 101 Main Street, there's Christie and Bay Shore, there's Christie and Woodland Hills, and so on. So a lot of information coming in here from QuickBooks. Like I said, the sync is pretty timely. It happens pretty quickly. let's go in and enter a quote now, see what that looks like. Right. So I'm going to create a quote for Christy. So let's call this a cabinets order. We'll order some cabinets. I'm going to change my quote stage to closed accepted, which means it's going to go into QuickBooks after I save this and sync it. I'm going to say this is going to be valid through the end of the month. And we're going to do this for Christy. There's our Magic Johnson Parkway address. And let's add a line item or two. So notice I typed the first couple letters, and these are all products that got synced in here from QuickBooks. So let's do a light pine cabinet. $17.99. That's an expensive cabinet. You'll see a little green QB here. That means this item is valid in QuickBooks. So it validates that for you. If you were to type in an item that didn't exist in QuickBooks, it would let you know that. Let's put in another. Let's get some cabinet pulls, and let's get 10 of these at $5 a piece. You notice it charges sales tax. The tax rate comes from the San Domingo tax rate, which syncs from QuickBooks as well. So I'm going to save this. Okay. And I'm going to go into our QuickBooks connector, and I'm just going to launch it. Now you notice there's a checkbox here that says sync to QuickBooks. And so once it becomes synced, that'll get checked. Now while we're waiting for this to get into QuickBooks, I'm going to show you the product catalog. So I'm going to go back to our admin screen. And in Sugar, the inventory items are kept in a place called the product catalog. And I'm going to sort this by quantity on hand. Again, sorry, our network has been slow this morning for some strange reason. Naturally. There we go. So these are all items that have come in from QuickBooks, and you'll see these are some custom fields in the inventory in QuickBooks: material, color, size. That got synced in. Quantity on hand, year-to-date dollars sold, year-to-date quantity sold. All this is coming in from QuickBooks. And so that makes these items available for reporting and for quotes. Let's go back to our quote now, and let's refresh this and see if it's synced to QuickBooks. Not yet. Not yet. Okay. So, again, we'll go back to the product catalog. Let's take a look at where we're at on this. Oh, okay. We should be good. Let me reset this one. There you go. So it says checked, sync to QuickBooks, and it tells us QuickBooks sales order number 7031. All right. If I were to go into QuickBooks, Christy, there's sales order 7031. And if I open it up, it's going to Christy at 100 Magic Johnson Parkway. It has our cabinet line items with the grand total, sales tax, and so on. So the syncs really work that simply. Couple last things to show you guys, and then we'll open it up to questions. Let me get back to the home screen. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was, all the data that comes in from QuickBooks is available in all the standard Sugar ways. So the data is here on the dashboard. It's also available in reports. So we created a report called Sales by Item, by Account, by Item. And this just uses our sales history. And what this does is I can say, show me everything that Christy has bought. And so this lists everything that Christy has bought, right? And it's in quantity order. The other cool thing about this is I could say, I want to see everybody that bought framing from me. So I'm going to say, the item contains framing, and the account is not empty. And I'm going to apply that. So look at that. Now I have a list of everybody, every customer that's bought framing from me, and who the big buyers are. Pre-tail real estate has actually bought more framing than anybody else, and so on. It's a pretty cool tool, again, for salespeople to use. And, this data is in QuickBooks, and there's ways to report on this data in QuickBooks, but I think this reporting is really simple and straightforward, and if you want to put your salespeople in Sugar, you can do that, and then they can have access to all this data, and they don't have to go into QuickBooks. So that's a really cool thing about the integration. Like I said, all the data is available in whatever way you want to use it in terms of standard Sugar functionality. For example, Sugar has an area called workflows, which means if something happens, you can generate alerts or emails to different users that it happened. So you can certainly use the QuickBooks data for workflows or alerts and such. The last thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to go back into the admin screen, and we're going to just take a quick look at the mappings tool, just so you can see how straightforward it is. So I'm going to go into QuickBooks and Sugar Field Mapping. And really, it's really this simple. So if I were going to go into inventory, and let's say I created a custom field like color, I just pick that off the list on QuickBooks, and I say, you know, I want that to go into the color field in Sugar. Boom. And I click Add, and then the next time the sync happens, those fields are synced. And really, you'll see colors already here. We already did that. But it's really that simple. And so anytime you add custom fields, or if you want a field to go from one place in QuickBooks to a different place in Sugar, it's this straightforward. And we've built the integration for people who aren't programmers, for people who are just regular users of the software. So hopefully this is stuff where, you know, obviously we're here for support. If there's questions, you can call us, but most of our users are able to do this kind of thing on their own. And we're pretty excited about that. And I think with that, that concludes the demo at this point. I'm ready for questions if there are any. Adrian?
Thank you, David. Yes, we do have a couple questions, and I do have some polls I'd like to ask the audience. I'm going to go ahead and read the questions now. Let's see. We have quite a few. Can we cut a PO from an order in Sugar?
Can you cut a PO from an order in Sugar? Right now, the orders in Sugar are not mapped to purchase orders in QuickBooks, but that's certainly something we can add probably as a feature. But out of the box, we're not integrating sales orders in Sugar with purchase orders in QuickBooks. But certainly that's something that could be added fairly easily, I think.
And then if it can be added, there's also an additional question to this. Can we add a note, and then it says code number sign, to the PO and the invoice?
Yeah, that's just part of the mapping. So right now when you add notes on sales orders, on quotes in Sugar, they end up in notes on sales orders in QuickBooks. So the same functionality would work with purchase orders.
Okay. And then I have another question here. Can we enter an invoice directly in SugarCRM?
Yeah, you can enter an invoice in the quotes module, and it can be mapped to invoices in QuickBooks.
Can you limit the customers to be shown only to the salesperson that are assigned to them?
Yes. Part of the mapping is that the salespeople assigned to a customer in QuickBooks are also assigned to an account in Sugar. And so the owner, that account you can configure Sugar so only the owner of accounts can see their own accounts. So it's just a Sugar configuration thing in security. It's pretty straightforward. It's a standard Sugar function, though.
Okay, hold on. I want to get to the last one. It's quite a few. Which versions of QuickBooks does this work with?
It works with Professional, Premier, and Enterprise.
On the product sales history, can we drill down to the sales orders to see how much they paid for that item on the last order and when? I'm sorry, I need glasses. So did you get that, David?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had that request frequently recently. It's not currently in the product, the last purchase price for an item, but we're going to be, in the next release of the product, we're going to be adding that. That's a great question, and that's actually come up a bit in the last couple of weeks with a couple of our users.
Okay, similar topic. I'm confused with the fact that David configured for QB to be primary in the admin, but the address change demo was from Sugar to QB. So is it two-way?
It can be two-way, but in the demo, I changed the address in QuickBooks, and it then changed in Sugar. So QuickBooks is the master. QuickBooks is configured to be the master, and when I changed the address in QuickBooks from Kobe Bryant to Magic Johnson, it then changed in Sugar from Kobe Bryant to Magic Johnson.
Okay, so now we have a question, I think, that's added on to a previous question. We have no which years. So I'm not sure what question that was appended to.
I'm not sure I'm following the question. It may be around, yeah, I'm not sure if it's relating to knowing what the current year is in terms of the year-to-date sales history. That's just based on whatever the year-to-date sales history is in QuickBooks.
So let me look for the person who answered that question. We had another one come in, so it skipped off, and I'll try to get back to that question. But we have another question here. We are hearing an echo through the speakers. Can this be eliminated? Maybe someone can mute their line? I'm not hearing.
I'm hearing the echo also.
Oh, you are? I'm not hearing the echo. It may be me. So I will mute while you're answering. There are accounting Intuit versions of QuickBooks that include Premier, etc. Will it work with the accounting version?
Yeah. We've tested it with most of the versions that we've been able to access, and accounting is one of them.
Okay. Okay, so here's the QB version year is what the question was, David?
Okay. We've tested it with 2010, 11, 12, and yeah, we've tested it with 2010, 11, and 12, and it works with all of those so far.
Will the changed address also change historical info, i.e. invoice address?
No, it shouldn't. The address in invoice history should stay with what it was when the invoice went out.
On the product sales history, can we drill down to the sales orders to see how much they paid for that item in the last order and when?
Yeah, that's a similar question to the one that was a little earlier, which was, I had mentioned that's not currently a feature in the software, but it's going to be in our next release. It's a great question, and as I said, we've had a bunch of requests for being able to look at the last price that a customer paid for an item, and so we're adding that to the next release, which should be within the next month.
Okay, so we have another clarification here. Know which years of QuickBooks does this work with? I think you just answered that. Is there a cost to purchase the QB plugin for Sugar?
Well, the cost of the Sugar QuickBooks integration is generally $14.99 a year. That's for most versions. And the QuickBooks Web Connector is no additional charge, if the question was around that.
Is the QB data exportable from Sugar?
Yes. As I had mentioned a few times in the demo, one of the things that was really important to us when we built the integration was that we bringing in the QuickBooks data consistent with all standard Sugar protocols. So the data is available for exporting, for dashboards, for reports, etc. So yes, it's available for export.
How do you match accounts? Our QB data and Sugar data don't have any exact matches, i.e. Lakers Inc. and Lakers Incorporated.
That's a great question, and one of our advanced features in the system, and let me see if I can actually, I'll show you guys this because this is worth looking at. Let's see. In the setup screen, you tell it how to. So you'll see this is on our. And then it tells you underneath what that means. So what it means is this is what links Sugar accounts to QuickBooks customers. The default is by primary email address. But you don't have to have it do that. You can have a custom mapping. So you can tell it what field in QuickBooks needs to match what field in Sugar. So you can create custom fields for this. You can use account number field. You can use the company name. You can use the email address, the phone number, whatever works for you. We start off with email address as a default because we kind of like that one, but we realized early on that just because we like that doesn't mean that works for everyone, and so we give you flexibility in what you choose to use to manage the sync. So hopefully that addresses that issue.
And then for the case integration, can this be set up so it grabs all cases for a month and sends them all to the invoice instead of each case creates a new invoice? Does that make sense, David?
Tweak it so that if you want to consolidate cases into one invoice, we can do that.
Okay. And then let me just, okay. Does this work with SugarCRM CE?
It does work with CE. It's a little more limited because CE doesn't have a product catalog or quotes. So it works, and it will keep your accounts synchronized, and it will bring in sales history and all that stuff into Sugar. But the quote synchronization, obviously, and the product catalog synchronization would be mostly irrelevant since those modules aren't available in CE. But the short answer is yes, it's compatible with that.
And the CE is the Community Edition, correct?
Correct. That's the free downloadable version of Sugar.
Okay. Do you have to still import product lists into Sugar, or will all of the product information come from QuickBooks?
All the product information comes from QuickBooks. So no more importing. Kind of cool.
David mentioned the cost is $14.99. Does this mean $14.99 a year or $1,499 a year? Or
Thank you
else?
for allowing me to clarify that. It's $1,499 per year.
Okay. Can you show or describe cases in Sugar invoices in QuickBooks?
The idea behind cases, and this is a newer feature, is that you have the case data and you can enter in time records against the case, and then as the sync happens, there's a status field on the case, and the status field will dictate whether you want it to create an invoice or not. And when the sync runs, it will bring in the time entries as line items onto the invoice.
Okay. You broke up just a little bit there, but I think we got the answer. Let's see. Can you demonstrate the reverse of what you just showed, making Sugar the entry point to QuickBooks?
Making Sugar the entry point to QuickBooks. Well, I mean, you can. If you mean, I'm assuming that means you're making Sugar the master. Yeah, I mean, you make Sugar the master, and then you make changes in Sugar, and you would update it into QuickBooks. So, I mean, it works just the reverse.
And then I think you already answered this one, David. You indicated that you can limit the customers shown only to the salespersons assigned to them, correct?
Correct. That's a standard Sugar functionality. So as long as the sales rep is synced into the account as the sort of the owner of the account, then that's standard Sugar security and role setup.
Do you have a single user price for this link?
The price is for as many users as you have. It doesn't matter how many users you have. It could be 1 or 100. It's the same price.
Can you limit the customers to be shown? Yep, we already read that one. Can you demonstrate? Yes, we read that one. Okay, I think we got all the questions. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the audience here. If you still have a question, please raise your hand, and I will unmute your line, and we can ask it live. Okay, I see that we do have a question. Jay Ross, if you indicate your audio pin, which is right next to your name, I'll be able to unmute your line so that you can ask your question live. And it's just it should be a 3-digit number. And then if you still have any questions, please raise your hand. I do see a couple of hands raised. Marina, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line.
Hi.
Hi, Marina. Thank you so much for your question.
Oh, thank you. I'm just wondering, this application, the QuickBooks connector, is this a Fay Business Systems connection, or is this developed by Sugar?
It's developed by Fay Business Systems.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you again. And then Richard, I'm going to unmute your line. Richard, thank you so much for your question. We should be able to hear you. I see a green light next to your name, but if your mic and speakers aren't functioning, then we won't be able to hear you. I do see that you asked a question. And then I'm going to move on to Suraj. Suraj, go ahead. Thank you so much for your question. You should be able to speak.
Hi, sorry, I think my question was answered when
Oh,
someone else asked it.
good. Okay, thank you so
Thanks
much.
for that.
Stephen, we should be able to hear you. Thank you for your question.
When's 2013 tested?
Stephen,
Yeah.
you're very faint.
When is 2013 going to be tested?
When is 2013? We may be good for 2013 now. I can certainly send an email out to everybody and let them know. So I think we've done some testing with 2013. I don't think we've had any issues with it, but I can confirm that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to go ahead and launch some polls, and then I'm going to review the questions just to make sure we got all of them while we're launching the polls real quick here. So if I may ask the audience, if you're interested in learning more about the SugarCRM QuickBooks integration, we'll give you a call. So please answer that poll if you may. It's on your screen. I see 56% of you have voted. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that one out. And I'm going to launch another one. Are you currently using SugarCRM? I've got a couple more to vote. And I do see some more questions here, so I will read your questions in a moment. And I'm going to share the results of that one. I've got 54% of you, yes, using Sugar, and 46% of you, no. And I'll just open up the question dialog box again. David, can we add only certain customers to Sugar from QuickBooks?
Yeah, there's a way to flag a field in QuickBooks to either tell them to sync that customer or not sync that customer.
Can we add customer notes field to Sugar?
Yeah, yes, there is a notes field already on the accounts, but you can add a custom field for that as well and sync the notes from QuickBooks. In fact, I think some of the notes synced over on the account we were looking at.
Any limit on QB database size? Our QB file is pretty big.
You know, we'd have to look at it. I mean, technically there's no limit, but depending on what you're syncing, whether it's invoice history or customers, et cetera, you know, we'd want to take a look at it and make sure that everything was cool.
And I think that's it. I don't see any other questions. If the audience has further questions, please just raise your hand and then that'll flag me to unmute your line. And with that, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today on this Friday morning. We really appreciate you taking time to learn more about this integration. We're very excited about it. David, did you want to close with anything?
No, thanks everybody for coming, and you know, we continue to come up with new features and functionality for the integration. You know, it's been out for close to a year, and we continue to innovate and add features and functions every month. So, you know, if there was something that you were looking for that wasn't exactly there, you know, drop us a line, and maybe it's something that's coming in a future release. And thanks all for coming.
Thank you, David. All right, everybody, have a wonderful weekend. Take care.